Peace, 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 love, and light to the family. I am Seth coming to you today with another installment for Way Back Wednesday. So, last week we went in on Marcus Garvey. We watched the movie The Black King that was all about him and his little movement to get us all back to Africa, right? And we started going in on why this movement was not one, that was beneficial to us, but one that was actually meant to disinherit us from our inheritance, which is the land that they call America. So this week we gonna continue on in that same vein, and we gonna get into it. Since we already watched the movie last week, we will not be watching it again this week, but we still gonna continue on that good breakdown that we was doing. I did have my girl Sharice up here with me, Sharice the realist. Shout out to her. But she won't be making it this week, for some extenuating circumstances. It's a lot of shit going on. But yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and get into it, y'all. So we left off talking about all of the different people who were against the American colonization movement, and that was to colonize Africa, to be specific. So let's continue on with that. We were reading some real good personal accounts of how people really felt, and that was just a gold mine of information. And I'm going to share that with the chat so y'all can see this stuff for yourself. And again, I want to also point out, I want everybody to be able to find information, primary sources of information, which is the best information. If we can get it as old as we possibly can, that's even if you have to translate some shit, and that's when you really getting into it, when you getting into another language and you got to translate that into English, a language you can understand. But it definitely helps us to get the real source, the real information. So we're gonna continue on in that vein. Give me a moment, y'all, so I can bring that back up. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Is it this here? This one here? Okay. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. So many sources I got. I mean, I'm locked and loaded with sources on just this topic alone, so you already know it's real. You already know it's real. This might be it right here. Yes, this is it. Okay. So let me drop this in the comments for y'all. And see over here. I don't mind linking y'all. I'm going to plug y'all in on the same sources that I got, because I don't believe in charging people for information, because ain't nobody charged me. This ain't something that I wrote. So why should I be charging people for information that I didn't write? Yes, I did the research. Hey, Sharice. Peace to you, sis. Thank you for coming in and checking me out. Because, girl, it might be a struggle live, but we in this bitch. Well, yeah. So I just wanted to share what I've been finding, because I'm not doing this on my own. It's not just for me. This is supposed to benefit all of us, all of our different Aboriginal nations, and to help us get back to where we're supposed to be. And that's as, the lords and the ladies of this land. So, without further ado, I'm going to continue on from what we was reading. These personal accounts from people who gave their opinion about moving to Africa. Okay? So, where should I begin? Who we going to start with? Let me first of all share my screen so y'all can see what I'm seeing. Okay. Share. I hope y'all are seeing this. Y'all seeing that? Let me get it big and bold for y'all. Okay. All right. So we going to start off with, okay, our boy Reverend Peter Williams. Okay, he went in. Like, we was boy, I was I was surprised, but I'm definitely proud of Reverend Williams, because Reverend Williams was not playing with these folks. Let's hear what he got to say. So Reverend Williams, in his address to New York City on July 4th, the 4th of July, y'all, 1830. It says, in his 4th of July address to St. Philip's AME Zion Church, delivered for the benefit of the colored community of fugitive slaves in Wilberforce, Canada, Reverend Peter Williams disputes the notion that colonization in Africa offers a better future for so-called African Americans than in America. All right, let's see. Let's get into it. Much has also been said by colonizationists about improving the character and condition of the people of color in this country by sending them to Africa. Y'all notice he did not say that the African people. Anyway, this is more inconsistent still. We are to be improved by being sent far from civilized society. This is a novel mode of improvement. What is there in the burning sun, the arid plains, and barbarous customs of Africa that is so peculiarly favorable to our improvement? Where hinders our improvement here? Where schools and colleges abound, where the gospel is preached at every corner, and where all the arts and sciences are verging fast to perfection? Nothing but prejudice. It requires no large expenditures, no hazardous enterprises to raise the people of color in the United States to as highly improved a state as any class of the community. All that is necessary is that those who profess to be anxious for it should lay aside their prejudices and act towards them as they do by others. We are natives of this country. We ask only to be treated as well as the foreigners. Not a few of our fathers suffered and bled to purchase its independence. We ask only to be treated as well as those who fought against it. We have toiled to cultivate it and to raise it to its present prosperous condition. We ask only to share equal privileges with those who came from distant lands to enjoy the fruits of our labor. Do y'all hear what he's saying? How you gonna treat us, the native people, the aboriginal people that's been here before anybody else, like we some damn foreigners? But the foreigners, and that is to this day, ladies and gentlemen, 2025, but Trump changing things. But the foreigners, these illegal aliens, get better treatment, get more assistance, get more of a voice and power than we do? Hell no. So let these moderate requests be granted, and we need not go to Africa nor anywhere else to be improved and happy. We cannot but doubt the purity of the motives of those persons who deny us these requests and would send us to Africa to gain what they might give us here at home. But they say the prejudices of the country against us are invincible And as they cannot be conquered, it is better that we should be removed beyond their influence. This plea should never proceed from the lips of any man who professes to believe that a just God rules in the heavens. So, Reverend Peter Williams, he ain't going. Okay, okay, Reverend Williams. Let's see what this next person got to say. James Fortin. In 1831, a letter to William Lloyd Garrison, February 23rd, 1821. So by 1831, James Fortin had become an opponent of re-Africanization, quote unquote. Yes, he did eat them up. All right. Distrusting the motives of the American Colonization Society. All right. So, fam, if the people of that time that's contemporary with the American Colonization Society ain't trusting this back to Africa thing, why in the hell is we? Why do we think that it's okay for us now today when we clearly see right now that our ancestors were not okay with this? It's been time to wake up. The alarm clock been coming out. Now your mama is coming out her room with that belt and she about to whoop your ass to waking up. You understand? All right. So he distrusted the motives of the American Colonization Society. And in this letter to the white abolitionist and anti-colonizationist Garrison, Fortin reviews the growing opposition. He says, I am greatly astonished that the ministers of the gospel should take so active a part in endeavoring to convey free men of color to Africa. Instead of doing this, they should be endeavoring to remove prejudice and improve the condition of colored people by education and by having their children placed in a situation to learn a trade. I have never conversed with an intelligent man of color who's not swayed by sinister motives, that is, who was not decidedly opposed to leaving his home for a fatal climate of Africa. Hey, it's like we ain't gonna make it. Anyway, I am well acquainted with all the masters of vessels belonging to this port in Philadelphia who have been to the coast of Africa. They all agree in representing it as one of the most unhealthy countries. I well remember that when the New England Regiment marched through this city on their way to attack the English army under Lord Cornwallis, there were several companies of colored people, as brave men as ever fought. I saw those brave soldiers who fought at the Battle of Red Bank, where the Hessians were defeated. Now the descendants of these men are to be removed to a distant country, while immigrants from every other damn country are permitted to seek an asylum here and to enjoy the blessings of civil and righteous liberty. What? We ain't going. 1831. Resolutions of Colored Citizens of Boston, March 12th, 1831. These are a group of free so-called African Americans. Listen, National Humanities Center, whoever wrote this. Clearly, these people they're not calling themselves Africans, so why the hell are you? I'm gonna need y'all to pump y'all brakes on this African American thing. Y'all clearly see that these people do not call themselves African. They are American. So I'm gonna need you to call them American. So a group of free Americans in Boston composed an address to white citizens who had formed a state. Let me call them European whole citizens, European cave citizens who had formed a state chapter of the American Colonization Society, listing specific objections to an African colony for free slaves. He says, we further object to the American Colonization Society because its members admit slavery to be an evil and use no means to destroy it, but are exerting all their influence to urge every free person of color to Africa whose right to this soil holds good with any other citizens, holds better, thereby riveting the chains of slavery stronger than ever upon their oppressed brethren. Again, we object because the whole spring of action seems to originate in the fear lest the free people may whisper liberty in the ears of the oppressed. We would suggest, however, that they who are fond of liberty should not be annoyed at its sound from whatever source it may come. Again, we object on the ground of there being sufficient land in the United States on which a colony might be established that would better meet the wishes of the colored people, and a much cheaper rate that could possibly be done by sending them to a howling wilderness far away and to them unknown. Now, y'all, ain't it supposed to be some folks that's supposed to be coming from Africa? I don't know, maybe about 20, 30 years before this. So shouldn't it be some folks that know about Africa? We was reading an account of a brother who they say was kidnapped in Africa, right? Let's read it. 1826 now. This is what, 18 years after they supposedly stopped the transatlantic slave trade. But we got Newport Gardner, who is supposed to be captured in Ghana as a teenager, right? Now, Newport Gardner actually immigrated to Liberia. Okay. This is what he's saying, 1826. But first, let's read this. Newport Gardner was supposed to have been captured in Ghana as a teenager, right? Okay. Keep that in mind now. It's a Newport Gardner eventually gained his freedom and co-founded the Free African Union Society in Newport, Rhode Island. All right. And I guess that was back in 1787. But in 1826, he returned to Africa with other free blacks, settling in the new colony of Liberia. His response on boarding the ship was described in the memoir of the life and character of Samuel Hopkins, 1830. Now, he kidnapped in Ghana as a teenager, returned back there in 1826. Okay. Let's see what he got to say. So, one aged black was among the number who seemed to be filled with almost youthful enthusiasm for the cause. I go, he exclaimed, and this is Newport Gardner that they talking about. Newport Gardner say, I go to set an example to the youth of my race. I go to encourage the young. They can never be elevated here, and I'm guessing here is America. I have tried it 60 years. It is in vain. Could I, by my example, lead them to set sail and I die the next day, I should be satisfied. Okay, let's break this down. They said that Newport was captured in Ghana as a teenager. Okay. So let's say that that's true, right? Let's say he was captured at 15. And when he got over here, it said he tried 60 years. So I'm guessing that he's been in America for 60 years. So let's say he's 75 now. All right. From the way that he's talking, it seemed like his memory is fine. Okay. So Is anybody wondering why in the hell he ain't trying to go back to Ghana? Anybody wondering why he ain't say that he was going over to Africa to get connected back to his family that he was taken from when he was 15? Anybody else asking that question but me? Because it don't make no sense that I done been taken from my people, right? Straight stole from my family. And I ain't doing everything that I can to get back over there to my family. When the opportunity finally come for me to get back to Africa, and somebody asks me why I'm taking the opportunity, and I don't say, man, they kidnapped me from my family and I'm trying to get back over there to my family. Some is telling me that he wasn't from over there. That's what it's telling me. Because how is that not your primary reason for going back? If that's where you from, how is that not your prime? Because I'm going back home. No, he's saying that he's trying to set an example for the young people because he feel like they don't have a chance to elevate in America no more, because now America is so-called a white man's land. So yeah, that didn't make no sense. I suggest that, y'all go back and read this here to see what the real tea is, because somebody lying. So let's continue on with these excerpts. All right. So in 1832, Peter Osborne, on the 5th of July address in New Haven, Connecticut, says, before the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863, many free Americans, held July 5th events to promote abolition and equality instead of celebrating Independence Day on the 4th. In this address to the African church, but yeah, now we celebrate. Do y'all see how they hijack every single last one of us? If y'all not seeing the breakdown and the change, baby, go to your eye doctor because you blind. But anyway, before the Emancipation Proclamation, okay, I ain't gonna read all that. In the address to the African Church of New Haven, Peter Osborne rallies his listeners to unite for emancipation and reject the prospect of colonization. Here he go. Fellow citizens, on account of the misfortunes of our color, our 4th of July comes on the 5th. But I hope and trust that when the Declaration of Independence is fully executed, which declares that all men, without respect to person, were born free and equal, we may then have our 4th of July on the 4th. It is thought by many that this is as impossible to take place as it is for the leopard to change his spots. But I anticipate that the time is approaching very fast. Let us all unite and with one accord declare that we will not leave our own country to immigrate to Liberia, nor anywhere else to be civilized nor Christianized. Let us make it known to America that we are not barbarians, that we are not inhuman beings, that this is our native country, that our forefathers have planted the trees in America for us, and we intend to stay and eat the fruit. Okay, our forefathers fought, bled, and died to achieve the independence of the United States. Why should we forbear contending for the prize? It becomes every colored citizen in the United States to step forward boldly and gallantly defend his rights. What has there been done within a few years since the union of our colored people? Are not the times more favorable to us now than they were 10 years ago? Are we not gaining ground, somebody? Do y'all hear me? Yes. And had we begun this work 40 years ago, I do not hesitate to say that there would not have been at this day a slave in the United States. Take courage then, ye Americans. He say Afric. What is that? What does Afric mean? Color. Take courage then, ye colored Americans. Don't give up the conflict, for the glorious prize can be won. Y'all, the ancestors speaking. Are you listening? Do you hear your ancestors talking to you? Do you hear them? They trying to get your attention. They waking you up. Hear that alarm clock and get your ass up. 1833. Maria Stewart, in her address to the African Masonic Hall in Boston on February 27, it says that she was an American abolitionist, challenging white colonizationists to direct their efforts at Americans' needs rather than their own. She says, I am informed that the agent of the Colonization Society has recently formed an association of young men. They always targeting our kids, y'all. They always targeting the young ones. Because it's easy to teach them new tricks, but it's hard to teach an old dog some new tricks. So watch out for your kids, y'all. Because I bet you it's a program in them schools right the fuck now that's indoctrinating your kids into believing something that's not true. And to indoctrinating your kids into following some type of agenda these mofos got going on. So look out for what it is that they got your kids learning in school. Be very, very vigilant. Anyway, again, she say, I am informed that the agents, okay, they still around, of the Colonization Society has recently formed an association of young men for the purpose of influencing those of us to go to Liberia who may feel disposed. The colonizationists are blind to their own interests. For should the nations of the earth make war with America, they will find their forces much weakened by our absence. Or should we remain here, can our brave soldiers and fellow citizens, as they were termed in time of calamity, condescend to defend the rights of the whites and be again deprived of their own, or sent to Liberia in return? Or if the colonizationists are real friends to Africa, let them expend the money which they collect in erecting a college to educate her injured sons in this land of gospel light and liberty. For it would be most thankfully received on our part and convince us of the truth of their professions and save time, expense, and anxiety. Y'all, I'm hearing a common theme here that, traveling over to Africa and then back to America, they saying it's kind of expensive and time consuming and anxiety reckoning and life threatening. So think about that when you think about the transatlantic slave trade, which happened before time when it was much more difficult to do these things that they proposing. Just think about it. But anyway, let's continue. Let them place before us noble objects worthy of pursuit and see if we prove ourselves to be those unambitious Negroes that they term us to be. Motherfucking liars. Anyway, but methinks their hearts are so frozen towards us, they had rather their money should be sunk in the ocean than to administer it to our relief. And I fear if they dared, like Pharaoh, king of Egypt, they will order every male child among us to be drowned. But the Most High God is still as able to subdue the lofty pride of these white Americans as he was the heart of that ancient rebel. And sis, ancestor auntie, that still is ringing true today. I feel the same way. I'm going to read this one last one. Y'all going to have to read the rest because it's so many. So many of our people just was not going. And y'all need to understand that this is because Africa is not their homeland. America is. So in 1833, Reverend Nathaniel Paul, in his address in London, England, on June 11th, it says Reverend Nathaniel Paul, a American Baptist minister, traveled in Great Britain for 4 years to raise funds for the community of fugitive slaves in Wilberforce, Ontario, Canada. In this address, reported in the Patriot on July 10th, 1833, Paul refutes the colonizationist claim that Africa is the only, child. I about passed out of my seat, y'all. Let's go. This American Colonization Society has been in existence, I believe, for about 17 years. And at the moment it was organized, the colored people came forward in a body and said to the society, we do not wish to go to Africa. We consider this our home as the land of our nativity. But it has been objected that it was not the home of colored man. But then I say in the first line that the name American was originally applied to the copper colored people. Come on. Help me out, Sharice. Come on, somebody. Did y'all not say in what the boy name? Webster, in his 1828 dictionary, Webster told y'all that the American was a colored man, a colored woman, a colored child. So how in the hell is they now saying that it was not the home of a colored man? Boom. Motherfucking line. There go your lie. Right there. Okay. So they say on the contrary that Africa was his home and America is the home of the white man, y'all. Diabolical is right. I mean, it's straight devilish. This is demonic. Okay. This is demonic. Okay. He say, but we have asked our opponents, those who have thought fit to make the assertion, because who the fuck is y'all? What is it that has given to the white man a prior claim to the soil? Everybody went crazy in the crowd, okay? Everybody was going wild. All right. Was it, child? I almost feel like I'm in the crowd. Listen, I'm clapping my damn self. Okay, he's saying, was it because they went to the United States of America and instead of inculcating the pure principles of the gospel of Jesus Christ, they exerted their influence and the physical power in destroying the original inhabitants of this country? Was it because they found that they could not reduce the Indians to a state of servile bondage and therefore almost exterminated them and reduced them to a mere remnant? Has this given them prior claim? If it has, we submit to them and we say that they are entitled to credit for what they have done and for what they are still striving to do, namely to persecute and to drive them beyond the Mississippi. Try everybody going wild in the crowd. Okay. He say, I care not about their declarations to the contrary. It is my country. It is the land that gave me birth. And I have as good a right to it. Child, you got more right to it than anybody else. But anyway, in saying this, I only speak the sentiments of the people of color generally throughout that country. They all imbibe the same sentiments. And they say to their white brethren, why is it that you wish to expel us while you throw open the door to European immigrants? You say to the English, the Scotch, the Irish, and the French, come here. Here is liberty. Here you may enjoy all the blessings which we as a nation enjoy. But the colored people must be expelled. What can we think when statesmen, even ministers of the gospel, in which I've heard myself, and pleading on behalf of the Colonization Society, say the free people of color are a curse in this country? And if you do not expel them, the time will come when they will be associated with the slaves, will rise in mass and cut the throats of all the white inhabitants of this country. See, y'all trying to get rid of us because y'all don't want scalping season to come back around. Y'all trying to get rid of us because y'all don't want them tomahawks to get sharpened up and polished. Y'all don't want no war spears coming out. Now, we got the calliope out right now. We smoking on the peace pipe, but y'all don't want us to put that up in exchange for their good spear and their good tomahawk. That's what y'all don't want. So y'all need to get us up out of here, right? But bitch, we ain't going nowhere. So let's move on. We done read enough accounts of what our people back then was actually saying about this whole back to Africa, go back to Africa. Africa is your homeland. We see what they saying. They were saying, hell no, it is not. Okay? So who the hell are you to say that it is? Colored people of America today. So we're gonna move on, right? And we basically gonna show the effects of the American Colonization Society. All right. So we're gonna read this article right here from Black Perspectives. So it's titled The American Colonization Society, 200 years of the quote unquote colonizing trick. And this was written in 2016. Y'all see right here, Liberia College in 1900 from the Liberia Connection. All right. This is at the Schomburg Center in New York. Okay. 200 years ago this week, dozens of the nation's most powerful men met in the Davis Hotel in Washington to plot the removal of Americans from the United States. With the blessing of James Madison and James Monroe, clock them, the president and the president-elect, they formed the American Colonization Society, which was an organization that was as well known in the 19th century as it is obscure today. And y'all better know that's not by design. Hold on, I ain't sharing it. Because y'all got to see this too. Y'all got to see this too. So, they say that people don't know about the American Colonization Society today. And y'all think that ain't by design? They don't want y'all to know about this shit. Anyway, for the next 40 years, the American Colonization Society provided the most respectable answer to a simple question. What would happen to the people of America that have been made black by slavery if that slavery was abolished? Since the 1770s, when British and French abolitionists had begun to influence American thinking on race, so-called benevolent whites, and the United States had reorganized a contradiction between slavery and all men are created equal. but they were nervous about living alongside recently freed people in a race-blind republic. Colonization allowed them to celebrate their anti-slavery sentiments while promoting a future in which racial equality required separation. Okay. The roots of colonization thinking can be traced back to the 1770s and follow two distinct strands. Americans first debated the merits of a separate Black nation as a means of escaping white prejudice. In 1773, four slaves in Massachusetts petitioned the colonial legislature for a gradual emancipation plan, promising to remove themselves to Africa once freed. Immigration schemes, and we definitely gotta look into that further. Definitely. Because why are they saying that they gonna go to Africa? Sound like somebody been prompted. Anyway, immigration schemes were debated within free Black communities on the Eastern Seaboard throughout the 1780s and 1790s. In the 1810s, the Massachusetts Sea Captain Paul Cuffey visited Sierra Leone on two occasions, hoping to open a channel by which Americans might relocate to West Africa. I'm hoping that y'all are getting this tea. We are not from West Africa. We went to West Africa. For Cuffy, who is an Indian, got an Indian mama, for y'all that don't know, and other Black leaders, the astonishing achievement of Haitian independence in 1804 provided a powerful example of self-determination. Although this American strand of colonization enthusiasm never enjoyed majority support, I wonder why that is, among Americans, it continued to inspire figures as diverse as John Mercer Langston, Martin Delany, and Henry Highland Garnett through the 1850s. Agents, y'all. Agents. What did this say right here? Let me get a closer image of that. We'll go to that later. Let me share the link with y'all. All right. So the other strand of colonization thinking had a murkier provenance. From the first years of the Republic, white philanthropists and reformers from the Upper South to New England built an anti-slavery movement around the idea that Americans couldn't be permanently exiled from the promises of the Declaration of Independence. However, even its leading light struggled with the idea that free Americans could live alongside white people in equality. Thomas Jefferson famously addressed this anxiety in his notes on the state of Virginia. He says, why not retain and incorporate the Blacks into the state and thus save the expense of supplying by importation of white settlers the vacancies that they'll leave? Deep-rooted prejudices entertained by the whites, 10,000 recollections by the Blacks of the injuries they have sustained, new provocations, the real distinctions which nature's made, and many other circumstances will divide us into parties and produce convulsions which will probably never end, but in the exterminations of one or the other race. Trust me, baby. It ain't gonna be us because we don't die, we multiply. For Jefferson, this nihilistic view had a strongly racial component. He insisted that Blacks were probably inferior to whites. Even many of his fellow slaveholders thought this conclusion too strong, arguing instead that Blacks had been degraded by slavery. In effect, that they were temporarily inferior to whites and required a concerted program of uplift and education before being freed. For these white reformers, colonization provided easy relief from the moral and political challenges of integration. if a group of Black pioneers could be persuaded to leave the United States, in the words of Pennsylvania reformer John Parrish, they would create a new nation in which they could enjoy liberty and rights of citizenship. Better still, their example would inspire other free Blacks to make the same move. And many persons of humanity who continue to hold slaves would be willing to liberate them on condition of their soul removing. Child, we are not from Africa. We're Indians that have been enslaved. And now these people who want this country for themselves are trying to get rid of us. They say, we ain't finna release them from slavery until we know that we no longer will be threatened by them, because Indians don't play. Okay? Like we will rage your village. We will kill your women and your children. Okay? We'll enslave your men. So they gotta get rid of us before they release us from bondage, because they scared. They scared of us. All right, not the other way around. So what you look like being scared of a peck of wood when they scared of you. Understood? All right, so we're gonna move on. This American colonization thinking did not stop. Didn't they just say that this shit been going on for the past 200 years? This is 2016 when somebody last talked about it publicly, other than us. So it continued on. And now we finna go into the late 1800s and the early 1900s and talk about Jim Crow and Reconstruction. So let's take a look into Jim Crow. The world of Jim Crow. So let me make that bigger for y'all. So they say that the Jim Crow time period was between 1861 and 1876, 76 to 24, 24 to present. Y'all, every single last one of these dates are significant. So 1861, you got the beginning of the war, right? Beginning of the Civil War. This is 2 years before the Emancipation Proclamation. Yeah, but because Indians been tearing up on these folks' head, folks was already trying to get rid of their slaves. And for the people that was still holding on, you got the Civil War. And then in 76, we got basically the beginning of Reconstruction. And 1924, the reclassification period. And also when they make Native American citizens. Anyway, after the Civil War, Black Americans, so-called, were no longer enslaved, but they had not achieved equal status with whites in the American society. Y'all hearing the same language, right? The Civil Rights Act of 66 and 75, Civil Rights Acts also coincide. Don't that coincide with that Indian Treaty of 1866, Cherise? Anyway, the Indian Civil Rights Act of 1866 and 75 and the 14th and 15th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution were made virtual dead letters by hostile court decisions, culminating in 1896 with the Supreme Court's Plessy versus Ferguson, which gave legal sanction to the principle of separate but equal facilities segregated by race. In fact, separate facilities for Black people rarely were equal. They were inferior because segregation, the separation of people based on skin color, was based on the idea expressed in the Supreme Court Dred Scott versus Sanford decision of 1857 that Negroes were an inferior and subordinate class of beings. Despite the Civil War and emancipation, this remained the attitude of most whites. Segregation became commonplace and was codified by white-dominated legislatures. Jim Crow a name taken from a fictional minstrel character, came to be the nickname for America's own system of racial apartheid. In Virginia, the South, and some northern states, Plessy versus Ferguson both confirmed the status quo and gave impetus to even more rigid segregation laws. Black passengers were forced to sit at the back of streetcars or stand if there were not enough seats for whites. They were made to sit at separate sections of theaters, libraries, and train stations. People of color could not use water fountains, bathrooms, beaches, or swimming pools used by whites. They could only order takeout food from restaurants that served whites. Black children attended separate, usually ramshackle schools. Social activities, along with everything from sports teams to funeral parlors, were segregated. When Black people donated blood, it was segregated from that of white donors. When Black members of the military traveled in uniform, they often were not allowed to use the restrooms at bus terminals and gas stations, and instead were directed to a nearby tree. After Korean War veteran Thomas Hardy returned home to Virginia in 1951, he wondered, what was I fighting for? What was I fighting for? So we got some signs of protesters, and most of these people are probably SNCC, Southern National Christian Conference. These are kids, as y'all can see. But though there is Jim Crow, and though there is separation or segregation, that means that we have our own autonomy, our own economy, okay, and our own way of living. Meaning we had our own buses we can ride. We ain't got to ride no white buses. We got our own theaters. We don't have to go to no white theater. We got our own schools. You don't have to go to no white schools. But with the coming of segregation or desegregation, all of that changed. But let's get back into the line of Jim Crow. Okay. So I got another source for y'all. This is from the National Museum of So-Called African American History and Culture. Let's look at this image from the Tulsa race riot. This is on June 1st, 1921. Y'all forgive all that noise because I'm right by the window and I live on a busy street. Okay. So we had other movements going on in the country that were not, pro going back to Africa, but we were trying to get rid of all of this racial violence and Jim Crow in this country as well because of the rise of lynching. So, a tool to assert and extend white control, lynching had one goal: to intimidate, punish, and terrorize Americans. During the first decade of the 20s, I guess they said since y'all last go to Africa, we gonna make y'all wish you wasn't alive. Anyway, excuse me. During the first decade of the 20th century, more than 850 Americans were lynched. Denied an official trial, most victims were dragged from jail cells after being accused of crimes. They were then hanged or shot. People were rarely prosecuted for their involvement of lynchings. You see, we done moved all around the Americas, okay? From North America to Central America to South America, back up to Central America, back up to North America. We'll move from the southeast of the United States to the northeast. We'll move from the northeast to the Midwest, from the Midwest to the West. Like, we'll move all around the Americas, but we ain't going to no damn Africa. Okay. All right. What else we got up here? So it's just basically talking about, how these people were just they started an entire campaign, okay? Started an entire campaign of violence, the KKK. Because they got to do something with us. They can't get rid of us. So what they going to do? Let's try to be as violent as possible. Let's bring all these folks over here. And let's get them joined up in these KKK groups. And we going to ride on them niggas, basically. Just keeping it plain. All right, let's see. So let's talk about this NAACP, okay? Elizabeth Freeman. All right, NAACP's fight against lynching. The rapid rise in the number of lynchings during the 19th and early 20th century sparked an anti-lynching campaign by the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People and other organizations. And I need y'all to know that these organizations are always founded by some clear people, by some non-copper colored, by some non-Americans. It's always them. It's always them. It was them with the abolitionist movement. It was them with the colonization movement. And now it's them with the NAACP. All right. These groups sought to increase public awareness of lynchings and to persuade Congress to pass anti-lynching legislation. In the first half of the 20th century, two anti-lynching bills were introduced in Congress, the Dyer Bill of 1922 and the Costigan-Wagner Bill of 1935. Supported by the NAACP, both bills passed the House of Representatives, but were blocked in the Senate by Southern Democrats. All you Democrats, listen up. All right. So, one of our movements also to counter Jim Crow and lynching was the silent protest parade. It says in 1917, the NAACP conducting a silent parade down Fifth Avenue in New York to protest violence against Americans in East St. Louis and around the country. Protesters helped to pressure public officials to pass anti-lynching legislation. I need y'all to also look here where it says we own, and I'm going to say over 250,000 farms with over 20 million acres of land worth over $500 million. And this is after these people have come here and done damage. After these people have enslaved our people. After these people killed many of our folks. After these people then pretty much taken all of our land. And our people had to get it back through patent. Okay, so we're going to watch this real quick. It's silent, y'all, so don't expect no sound. But you see, that is a testament of how much we owned. We did not need no lily whites to do anything for us, really. We just needed them to leave us the hell alone and get the hell up out of our country. Okay? All right. Let's see what's next. So next, child, this. Let me share this with y'all because this is the real tea. This is a whole diamond of a gem. And I'm going to read. Let me see. It's a lot, but we're going to get through it. Okay. I'm going to try to, stick to the most important points, but y'all need to read it. Period, point blank. Y'all need to read this. Okay. So let's start. Document resume. This was authored by David J. Smith. The title is Eugenics, Race Integrity, and the 20th Century Assault on Virginia's Indians. Hold up, let me share it. All right. Okay. So this was presented at the annual meeting of the Organization of American Historians. Y'all can see that this shit is official. Okay. All right. So the abstract says that this paper documents efforts made by some Virginians in the first half of the 20th century to promote and maintain racial separatism. Okay. Isn't that Jim Crow? Segregation, separate, making a difference between people by classifying them as white and black. All right. In the early 1920s, goddamn, the Anglo-Saxon clubs of America were founded in Virginia. And the leaders of this club, now y'all gonna see similarities between the Anglo-Saxon clubs of America and the American Colonization Society. It's just under a different name, y'all. The same concept, the same shit continues. Ain't nothing new under the sun. We keep on going through the same cycles. I hope y'all seeing this. So the Anglo-Saxon clubs of America were founded in Virginia, and the leaders of this group successfully persuaded the state legislature to pass in 1924. Remember, they said that we was fighting this whole Jim Crow thing at 1924. That's one of the big culminations of this fight. So in 1924, the Racial Integrity Act was passed. This act created two racial groups in Virginia, and people want to argue that, well, it was just Virginia. So is it only in Virginia that people are called white and black? Or is it every damn where? People got to use your common sense, okay? So this act created two racial groups in Virginia, white and colored. Anyone who could not prove himself or herself white was classified as colored for the purposes of birth records, marriage license, school attendance, and death certificates. What's different today? On every job application that you put on, you gotta classify your race, right? Birth certificates, they just stopped doing this, but you had to have a racial classification on it. Anything that you pretty much registering or applying for, you have to tell them whether or not you are white or black. And they got, some other little classifications in there, but they count it all the same. They count it all the same. Much of this paper focuses on Virginia's first registrar of vital statistics, Walter Plecker, and his campaign to preserve the integrity of the white race, which he perceived to be threatened. See, they scared, not you. They the ones that ain't got no numbers in a population. They the ones experiencing a birth rate decline. They scared, not you. Under the Race Integrity Act, there was no valid means of determining racial status, so Plecker had the opportunity to make subjective decisions about the rights of people to marry, to designate the race of their own children on birth certificates, and to claim a racial heritage of their own choosing. Plecker devoted a great deal of time and energy to discounting the claims of Virginia's Indian people to their heritage. Nothing that I'm reading or talking about that happened in the past is any different than what's happening today. Anyway, the legislative, bureaucratic, and judicial means Plecker and others sought to use in these efforts are recounted. I want to get to one spot, and I'm finna search this document. Since this is what we're talking about today, I'm going to start right you. In a letter to the Commissioner of Indian Affairs in April 1943, Plecker answered a complaint which had been lodged with the commissioner's office by a woman who claimed Indian status on the birth certificate of her child. She complained that her designation had not been honored and that she had been harassed, y'all. Apparently, a person on the commissioner's staff had advised him of Plecker's list, and that's a list of folks who's supposed to be Indians, y'all. And you're going to see that most of the people on there is so-called white. Anyway, and drew a parallel with the Nazi race hygiene program. Plecker acknowledged the comparison with seeming pride. Quote, "We would be delighted to have you or our representative visit our office and examine the mass of original and pedigree charts showing the racial origin of mixed breeds trying to pass as Indian or white. Our own index birth and marriage records showing race reach back to 1853. Such a study has probably never been made before. Your staff member is probably correct in his surmise that Hitler's genealogical study of the Jews is not more complete." Plecker, 1943. Russell Booker described what Walter Plecker was attempting to do to Indian people as documentary genocide, ethnocide. I agree with his conception. From my study of the Race Integrity Act and from my previous work on involuntary sterilization legislation and other aspects of the eugenics movement, I have come to believe that eugenics, which provided the philosophical and political undergirding for the actions of Powell, that's John Powell, y'all, and Walter Plecker, was an attempt at genocide on several fronts. Again, I'm telling y'all, if they can't get us over to Africa, they'll find other means to make this country white. It is clear to me that once the scientific and social trappings are removed, the out of Africa theory, that's the scientific racism that they basing all this shit on. The eugenics movement was an attempt to eliminate the presence of certain races and classes of people from this country. I just said that. In some cases, this meant genocide by taking away reproductive capacity. Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, anybody? Sterilization of people from an underclass who were labeled feeble-minded. They got all these asylums and all these prisons just for you. They gonna get you up out their face one way or another in their head. In other cases, it meant genocide by needlessly removing people from society and containing them in institutions. In other instances, it meant attempting to send a race of people back to Africa and thereby eliminating them from the United States. In still other cases, it took the form of attempting to destroy completely a race of people, so-called Native Americans, by legislating and bureaucratizing them out of existence. In each instance, the people in question were made to be viewed as an inferior strain of humanity. They were made into pseudo species. Have y'all ever heard of pseudo species before? This is the first time I done heard of the word pseudo species. I don't know if the man made it up for this particular situation, but that's crazy. And it is so freaking right. Black is a pseudo species. White is a pseudo species. African American is a pseudo species. The fact that some of these people survive psychologically and culturally is a testament to their dignity and courage. Good God. Good God, y'all read this source. So now that we talked about the American Colonization Society and how they done tried to get us up here, and we done talked about Jim Crow and how they tried to use violence and all kinds of injustice and inequality to persuade us to want to get up out of here. Now we're talking about the Racial Integrity Act, of how it pretty much took our American identity away. They got all these pseudosciences coming out, the out of Africa theory, the theory of evolution, that's, trying to convince people that we actually don't belong here, that we really shouldn't be here, and that we should be in Africa because that's where we supposedly came from. And we see here that the Racial Integrity Act is just another part. It's another step in this campaign to get us out of our own homeland. It's just another part of it. So let's see here. We're going to talk even more about this Anglo-Saxon Club of America and how they and Walter Plecker and someone else by the name of Ernest Xavier Cox use, all of these societies who infiltrated government. These people were in control of state governments and federal governments. That's how they were able to get all this stuff passed, because they were in the government. So, for instance, Ernest Xavier Cox, this motherfucker right here, scientists, that's what they call themselves, but they're nothing but politicians, because their science is political science. Their science is political science. It's pseudoscience created to push a particular agenda. It's pseudoscience created to undergird, to support a particular agenda. For instance, Charles Darwin and Francis Galton created the out of Africa theory and the theory of evolution to push the idea that so-called Negroes, the ones that's all around and throughout the Americas, were actually from Africa. That's political. It's not real science. It's a political agenda. You understand? So Ernest Xavier Cox was a committed white supremacist who advocated on behalf of anti-miscegenation laws, and that's, basically interracial marriage. And in 1922, co-founded with the composer John Powell, the Anglo-Saxon Clubs of America. This is your baby version, your junior KKK. A Richmond-based nationwide organization devoted to maintaining a strict separation of the races. In 1923, Cox published White America, a book that described his travels in Africa, and argues that race mixing would result in the collapse of white civilization. I wonder why. He also wrote extensively on eugenics, a now discredited scientific movement aimed at proving the superiority of the white race. Let me make one comment. If y'all have discredited eugenics, why in the hell do you still uphold the theories that was created by them. You still uphold the out of Africa theory. You still uphold the theory of evolution that were created by eugenicists. So how in the hell have you discredited the movement of eugenics? You ain't. You're lying. Together with composer Powell and Virginia State Registrar Walter Plecker, Cox played an influential role in lobbying the Virginia General Assembly, there in the government, to pass the Racial Integrity Act of 1924, a strict anti-miscegenation law, and later the Massenburg Bill, which banned racial mixing in all public places. In 1924, Cox formed an unlikely alliance with the Black nationalist Marcus Garvey, based on their shared belief that the only way to save the races was for so-called African Americans to relocate to Africa. Cox retired from the real estate business in 1958 and died in Richmond in 1966. So here we go. Here comes Garvey into the picture. Y'all thought it was taking a while for us to build up there, but this is fucking history. It's a chronology to this shit. It's a timeline to this shit. It was stuff that happened before Marcus Garvey came along that was the basis of his very doctrine. Okay? So to continue, let's see what else we got up in here. All right. I got some right here on Walter Plecker, so even deeper understanding of who he was. Play a little video for y'all. Fair use.
Of all the people buried here in historic Hollywood Cemetery, including presidents, generals, and statesmen, few have had the impact of Dr. Walter Plecker. His stormy legacy continues today.
My parents always made sure that we knew the story about what Walter Plecker had done and how it had affected our people.
Plecker was a menace to Virginia Indians over many years.
Well, Dr. Plecker was convinced that there was a need to purify the white race. He thought that he was preserving the Commonwealth of Virginia, that he was maintaining the United States of America, and most importantly to him, that he was protecting the white race.
For 34 years, starting in 1912, Dr. Plecker was the director of the state's Bureau of Vital Statistics, carefully compiling birth and death records. Anyone who had one drop of other than white blood was listed as colored. They were mongrels, in his view. Plecker was relentless. With great energy, he compiled lists and wrote letters chastising whites who applied for marriage licenses with those Plecker thought were impure.
There's no question that Plecker was incredibly aggressive about using the few prerogatives the law gave him to register people. He used those prerogatives really to threaten people, to coerce them. Dr. Plecker once boasted that he had a list of people by race that rivaled that list that was kept by Hitler of the Jews.
Virginia Indians particularly felt his wrath. Quote, like rats when you're not watching, he wrote, they've been sneaking in their birth certificates through their own midwives.
You know, we couldn't claim we were Indian. It was against the law to say we were Indian. What do we?
Hold the fuck up. If y'all ain't witnessing or noticing what I'm noticing, which I've always noticed about these so-called Indians of today, the ones who get to claim that they Indian, why the hell they always look white? Isn't this the... I'm going to finish this video, y'all, and then I'm going to show y'all why all these people on this video who talking about Walter Plecker hurt us and our Indian family and wouldn't let us be Indian. I'm gonna show y'all why these mofos is talking about they Indian. Okay, these clearly white, chalk colored white people is talking about the Indian. So let's finish this so we can get into that.
We claim. You know, we're not black and we're not white.
That whole idea that you are not what you believe yourself to be.
Whole groups of people who formerly were recognized among the tribes of Virginia simply disappeared from the records. They were no longer considered to be Native Americans or Indians, as they were called. Their children were not recognized as members of the tribes, and they're living with that legacy right now.
Plecker and his many supporters believed not only that races should never intermarry, they shouldn't even mingle. Strict segregation would last for generations. Blacks had to have their own schools and neighborhoods. So did Indians.
This was the schoolhouse, and for a long time, up until 1908, the church.
We blame Plecker, but he gave it to a very hungry audience. They ate it up.
Indeed, Plecker was seen as a heroic figure in an era when genetic engineering was becoming mainstream. The eugenics movement was white supremacy cloaked in science. Its supporters were many and influential, from leading academics at University of Virginia to wealthy industrialists.
We have to remember that in the 1920s, most people lived on farms. So people knew about livestock. They knew about growing corn. They knew about culling the herd and getting rid of the ones that weren't any good and keeping the ones that were the most sound. And so these ideas of animal husbandry were useful to people making biological arguments about society.
There was a lot of cross-pollination between Virginia's movement and Adolf Hitler's quest for a master race. The Richmond Times-Dispatch editorialized in 1924 that racial intermingling would ruin the white man. Quote, once a drop of inferior blood gets in his veins, he descends lower and lower in the mongrel scale. That was the year the General Assembly passed the Racial Integrity Act, narrowly defining race and making it illegal for whites to marry anyone of any other race. Plecker wrote to the governors of the rest of the states, urging them to pass similar laws to save the white race.
We have a law.
There's a sterilization law that's passed in Virginia, upheld later in the United States Supreme Court, allowing some 60,000 plus people to be sterilized in institutions, 32 states all over the country.
Well, we're trying to help them out, and you too. Have your entire family sterilized.
The Racial Integrity Act, which Plecker pushed, stood until 1967, when the appropriately named Loving case about an interracial couple led to a U.S. Supreme Court reversal. But the damage to Virginia's Indian tribes continues. There are more than 560 federally recognized Indian tribes in the country, but none of Virginia's tribes, the ones that helped the settlers survive, have that crucial recognition, because Walter Plecker did everything he could to destroy evidence of their existence.
I don't know that you can ever atone for the bad things that have been done. And we are people who believe in forgiveness and humanity and brotherhood. And so let's make today a new day.
In less than a century, what Dr. Plecker feared the most has come to pass.
I'm sure that Dr. Plecker would be shocked to walk through a city like Washington, D.C., or for that matter, downtown Richmond, and see that there were people of different races walking hand in hand. It wasn't the world that he looked forward to. He really looked forward to a very different, much more restricted world.
So y'all, that was that. But did y'all see the people that they had on there in Richmond talking about they were Indian and how Walter Plecker like destroyed their claim to their Indian heritage and their families and all that? But y'all also saw that those people were all white. Right? Y'all seen that, right? Ain't y'all like scratching the hell out y'all head, like wondering what is going on with that? Why these people who talking about they Indian and that they got, reclassified as black? Why is they white somebody? I need to understand. I need to know. And I'm finna show you why all them people, mofos that y'all was just looking at, who motherfucking white, was just calling their goddamn self Indian and then want to talk about they the motherfucking victims of the goddamn Racial Integrity Act of 1924. This is why. So let's read this. The racial integrity laws were passed by the General Assembly to protect whiteness, so-called, okay, against what many Virginians perceive to be the negative effects of race mixing. They included the Racial Integrity Act of 1924, which prohibited interracial marriage and defined a white person who has no trace whatsoever of any blood other than Caucasian. The Public Assemblages Act of 1926, which required all public meeting spaces to be strictly segregated, and a third act passed in 1930 that defined as Black a person who has even a trace of so-called African American ancestry. Why there ain't no classification for Indian? Anybody wondering that? So, this way of defining whiteness as a kind of purity and bloodline became known as the one drop rule, which niggas still follow to this day. These laws arrived at a time when a pseudoscience of white superiority called eugenics gained support by groups like the Anglo-Saxon Clubs of America, which argue that the mixing of whites and so-called Africans, okay, and Virginia Indians, which they apparently from the video that we just watched is white people. But anyway, they said that those people mixing could cause a great societal harm, despite the fact that these races had been intermixed since European settlement. From his position as the state registrar of vital statistics, Walter A. Plecker micromanaged the racial classification of Virginians, driven by concern that Blacks were attempting to pass as white. Oh, is that right? Yeah, I heard about that. But what about them whites attempting to pass this engine? Can we talk about that real quick? It said Virginia Indians were particularly incensed by the laws and by Plecker in particular because the state seemed intent on removing any legal recognition of Indian identity in favor of a broader category called colored. You know, y'all, I just wanted to point out, and I wanted to ask y'all, have y'all ever seen a Native American ever talking about having to use a colored water fountain or go to the back of a restaurant to order something to eat, or having to go to their own hospitals and schools other than them Indian schools where they was taught how to be Indian? I've never ever seen that. Like, I ain't never seen that. Got pictures, y'all, and I ain't never seen no pictures. Have y'all? But yeah, just to keep that in mind. So basically, they saying that Walter Plecker is telling folks who can and who cannot be Indian, and that anybody that's colored, right, is gonna be classified as colored or Black or Negro. So, do y'all know any Native Americans that's ever been called colored or Black or Negro? Anybody? Okay, let's continue. After one failed try, lawmakers largely achieved this goal in 1930, drawing negative reaction from the Black press. Where them Native Americans at? Where is they press? Where is they pressing? Okay. The Racial Integrity Act remained on the books until 1967, when the U.S. Supreme Court in Loving versus Virginia found its prohibition of interracial marriage to be unconstitutional. In 2001, the General Assembly renounced the act and eugenics as racist. Y'all, can somebody in the chat tell me what also happened in 1967 that's related to this? I'm going to let y'all put that in the chat while we move on. So, y'all see this here? Ooh, this is, you know what? This is so out. This is right on time. It's kind of disgusting, but it's right on time. So the background, damn, this shit is long as fuck. I ain't finna read all this. I just wanted to get to one particular part. One part. Let me see. Let me see if I can find it, y'all. Hold on. Because I want to share with y'all why we got the white folk talking about they is Indians. I think this is the part right here. Let me start here. So, in 1922, Walter Plecker, Ernest Cox, and the noted pianist and composer John Powell founded in Richmond the Anglo-Saxon Clubs of America. Y'all know that now. And according to Powell, the group was dedicated to finding the fundamental and final solutions of our racial problems in general, most especially of the Negro problem. Race mixing was a priority concern for these men. Articles by Cox and Powell, published in the Richmond Times-Dispatch on July 22nd, 1923, wondered, is white America to become a Negro nation? On August 4th, Plecker released a statement arguing that his position at the Bureau of Vital Statistics is perhaps the greatest force in the state today combating this position. Y'all see, they get in government so they can pass these laws to push their agenda. Because it was his power specifically to apply the state's racial definitions, and so decided who could marry one another. Indeed, Plecker admitted to applying a standard beyond the law when identifying people as so-called African American. But they weren't calling it that. They was calling it colored. Whereas the General Assembly had defined colored in 1910 as someone who with 1/16 or more Negro blood. But what the fuck is black blood? Then we just read the source that said that shit is a pseudo species. What is black? Wasn't the Indians called Negro? Who is Negro? Will the real Negro please stand up? Who is the real black? Because everybody being classified as black. So who is the black? Who is that person? Like, where did he come from? Where do he live? What this nation called black? Who was a founding father? Because I ain't found them yet. So who is this person with Negro blood that y'all is talking about? What's this Negro blood? Explain that to me. So they saying Walter Plecker defined Negro blood or colored as someone with even a trace of Negro blood. Like, again, what is Negro blood? How do I know if I got it? Like, is anybody else confused? How do I know if I got this Negro blood? What is a Negro? If an Indian is also colored and also a Negro, and an African supposedly is colored and also a Negro, which one is which? This Negro blood also included, they say nearly all Virginia Indians. So the Virginia Indians was Negroes? Is that right? Because they had so thoroughly interbred with African Americans. But when you go back and look at these Virginia Negroes, When you go back and look at these Virginia niggers, hold on, let me show y'all. Y'all just seeing them in the damn video. You see what they look like. Let's look at some of these Indian niggers that's supposed to be so thoroughly mixed with Negro blood, y'all. So shouldn't they look like us if they are so thoroughly mixed with us? Let me see, Virginia. I gotta look this shit up. Virginia Indians, 1930. Let me see if we're gonna get some good pictures. Y'all know they love to hijack the visual. Let me see. Nah, that ain't Virginia. This might be a good one. Okay, Richmond Public Library. Let's do it. Okay. They ain't got that many pictures though. They lying about the pictures, but we're gonna get into these pictures right here. Let me share this screen with y'all. All right, here we go. They said that the Indian of Virginia is so thoroughly mixed with the Negro, whoever that is, that you may as well call him a nigga. But I don't know if y'all can see this as good as I can. Let me try to make it bigger. Okay, that's as big as it gonna get. But hopefully y'all see these people and what they looking like. They say that these people is so mixed up with Negroes that you may as well call them Negroes too. These people here. Or these peoples right here. These people is so mixed up with Negro blood that you may as well call them Negroes. Then this is who y'all is the Indian. Is anybody as turned the fuck around as I am right now? Okay. All right. Let's get back to the other source. I'm hoping y'all are seeing this. Is right there in your face. So in 1923, the Anglo-Saxon Club suggested that a new racial integrity bill be enacted. The group's motivation, in part, was for the law to catch up with how government officials such as Plecker were already behaving in regard to race. So the Racial Integrity Act was introduced in the General Assembly as Senate Bill number 219 on February 1st, 1924, and House Bill number 311 on February 15th. In its original form, it required that all Virginians fill out a certificate of racial composition to be approved by the Bureau of Vital Statistics. Can y'all believe this? This certificate would be necessary in order to marry in Virginia, and it would be against the law for a white person to marry anyone but a white person. Although interracial marriage previously had been banned in Virginia, this was the first time that marriage between whites and Asians, y'all talking about them Native Americans, anyway, or other people who were legally neither colored nor white was prohibited. Wait, so hold on. Read between the lines, y'all. Another law passed in 1924 defined a colored person as having 1/16 or more Negro blood, the same as in 1910, and an Indian as having the same proportion of Indian blood, a broadening of the 1910 definition. I don't say y'all broadening the 1910 definition, okay, to put some more people in that Indian classification, maybe trying to put yourself in that classification, because I mean, what is we doing? The Racial Integrity Act went a step further and attempted a first for Virginia, and that's defining a white person. According to the proposed law, to be a white person, you must have had no trace whatsoever of any blood other than Caucasian. In other words, the standard already being applied to Plecker. Is this how we got this? Because, see, I guess they got that one drop and they can't be white no more. I guess that's how it happened. I guess y'all see the background picture, right? Y'all see what his folks look like. So now, this a Monacan Indian. He a chief. It's a white man. So is that definition of Indian, that broadening definition of Indian, that's how him and his people became the Indians, Dr. Plecker? Is that how it happened? Because it say here that to be a white person, they can't have no trace whatsoever of any blood other than Caucasian. And I don't know who in the hell, if y'all came over here, right? This ain't y'all land. This land is full of what y'all call colored people. How in the hell are y'all gonna be purely white? All of y'all motherfuckers can claim that y'all Indian, because you got somebody in your genealogy that's a full blood, because your dad is mixing with all the Indian women. So in other words, the standard already being applied by Plecker. However, people who had less than 1/64th, is we really going 1/64th man part Indian and no African American heritage would still be considered white? Whoa. So wait. So okay. So Indians can be white and whites can be Indian, but the nigga can only be a y'all, this is killing me. Okay, so the exception catered to those elite. Listen, y'all, listen up. This exception catered to those elite Virginians who counted themselves as descendants of Pocahontas and John Ross. Somebody please get Elizabeth Warren on the screen. Please get Elizabeth Warren ass up here. My God. I got to find a picture of Elizabeth Warren, y'all. I gotta do it. I can't move on without doing it. I can't move on, because this is what the hell we's talking about. This is what we are talking about. Okay? This white woman here is an Indian, according to the Racial Integrity Act. Y'all see what's going on, right? So we're going to move on. The historian J. Douglas Smith has noted that the so-called African American press remained relatively quiet about the bill. Aimed at those mixed race persons who were no longer clearly identifiable as Black, he argued. The proposed statute did not affect directly the vast majority of Black Virginians who had no desire to pass as white. It said that we was quiet because we wasn't affected by it. Is that because we had already been made Black through slavery? You already got your identity taken when your ancestors were enslaved. And then they come in here with their scientific racism, telling you that all Negro or all colored people come from Africa. So everybody thinking that, oh, well, even though this is our homeland, you know, they do say that so-called Black folks, they come from Africa, but you got other ones that are saying, no, we from America. Colored people of America are the indigenous, the aboriginal population. So this proposed statute apparently did not affect directly the vast majority of Black Virginians who had no desire to pass as white. But what about the ones that was Indian? What about those today called African American or Negro, or back at that time, colored? What about them? What about them? Because I could have sworn we had folks who been trying to claim their Indian heritage for a long time now. We got folks. Let me see some. Let me see some. Is this it right here? No, that ain't it. That ain't it. But anyway, it's articles out there telling you that so-called Black people of color or Negro people was calling the Office of Vital Statistics, calling down there at the Walter Plecker office, telling these folks, we just read that one woman was harassed when she put Indian on her baby birth certificate, but they changed it. Folks been calling, still, like, people was calling in the damn 2000s trying to correct their status from Negro or colored to Indian. So this idea that this wasn't affecting us, I'm not too sure about that, J. Douglas Smith, because it definitely looks like it was the Indian that the Racial Integrity Act affected the most, because white people can classify themselves as Indian. So-called Indians can classify still, or should I say Asians, as they said, can classify as Indian. Whites can classify as whites, but so-called Negroes cannot classify as Negro. They cannot classify as Indian. They can only classify as Negro. They're the ones who's put in the box more than anybody else in this equation. So, yeah, I don't know about all that. So let's get into good old Marcus Garvey. Marcus Mosiah Garvey. All right. So Hold on, I'm trying to get something here. All right, so y'all know that Joe Biden just pardoned the late Marcus Garvey, right? He used up one of his pardons to pardon somebody who cannot benefit. All right, so President Joe Biden on Sunday posthumously pardoned Black nationalist Marcus Garvey, who influenced Malcolm X and other civil rights leaders and was convicted of mail fraud in the 1920s. Also receiving pardons were, some other folks. So congressional leaders had pushed for Biden to pardon Garvey. Congressional leaders, not that damn what they call themselves, the Congressional Black Congress. They can push for the pardon Marcus Garvey, but can't push for us to get a damn dime in reparations. With supporters arguing that Garvey's conviction was politically motivated, was it? And an effort to silence the increasingly popular leader who spoke of racial pride. After Garvey was convicted, he was deported to Jamaica, where he was born. Not Africa. He died in 1940. Ooh, I don't say where he died. Not Africa. The man died in London. Anyway, so King, the so-called honorable Reverend Martin Luther King, who is not being honored right now, said of Garvey, he was the first man on a mass scale and level to give millions of Black people a sense. Why is y'all unquoting the quote? Wait a minute now. What he said between level and A. Because he did not say no to give millions of Black people. Y'all said that. Y'all get on my damn nerve with adding in shit that people did not say. Because y'all with the same hijack. Y'all hijacking people's words, man. He did not say to give millions of Black people. What did he say? Because the man didn't say he was the first man on a mass scale and level a sense of dignity and destiny. No, that don't make no damn no complete sentence. So what did he say? Why are you making up shit? That's a problem with y'all. And when y'all doing this research and reading these articles and these books, y'all need to understand that these people hijack shit. Y'all need to understand the biases that these people be coming from. These people are indoctrinated with the out of Africa theory. These people are indoctrinated with the idea that supposedly all melanated people come from Africa, or all people come from Africa. They are indoctrinated with eugenics, racist, pseudoscience beliefs. And that's where they're going to be coming from when they're writing their books, when they're writing their articles. Okay? You got to understand that these people add shit in that never was there. They add in the word African American where it was probably colored. They add in all these different ideas that further perpetuate a lie and an indoctrinated paradigm, an indoctrinated way of you thinking that you are African. And that Africa is where you should be. This is the American Colonization Society 3.0. If you don't understand, your ass gonna be taken. Wake up. So we clearly see, people is still trying to push this idea that Marcus Garvey is a hero to our people, and that the thing that he was fighting for is something that we should be supporting. So who is Marcus Garvey? Okay. Marcus Mosiah Garvey, born August 17, 1887 in St. Ann's Bay, Jamaica, His father was a stonemason and his mother a domestic servant. And as a young man, Garvey traveled and worked in several Latin American countries. Y'all gonna see this man ain't never, ever been to Africa. So he worked in several Latin American countries before relocating to London, England, where his ass is really from. It's where his folks is really from. He studied at Birkbeck College or the University of London and worked as a messenger and a handyman for the African Times and Orient Review, a journal that emphasized Pan-African nationalism. Pan-African movement started back, like the 1850s or so, something like that. And Garvey was known as the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, or the UNIA. Formed in Jamaica in July 1914, the UNIA aimed to achieve Black nationalism through the celebration of African history and culture. Through the UNIA, Garvey also pushed to support the Back to Africa movements. Okay. Then they say in another article that we was reading that he teamed up with Cox and Plecker, who was the creators of the Anglo-Saxon Club of America, who also created the Racial Integrity Act and was telling Indians that they was actually colored people. They was the same one that helped Marcus Garvey to push the Back to Africa movement. And he created the Black Star Line to act as the Black-owned passenger line that would carry patrons back and forth to Africa. He also fostered restaurants and shopping centers to encourage Black economic independence. In addition to his support of Pan-Africanism, Marcus Garvey was a Black nationalist and believed in racial separatism. This made him a controversial figure in and out of Black community, especially as he challenged major thought leader W.B. Du Bois, who also is nothing but a hijack. In 1922, Marcus Garvey was charged with mail fraud in connection with a ship on the Black Star Line, Orion. Ain't it? How dare you use the name of one of our ancient star constellations that we revere so much to be in connection with this fraud ass shit that you pushing. That's like, you know what? We're moving on. Further pressure from J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI and his department's investigations, negative press, and complaints from stockholders soon led Garvey gaining a reputation as a swindler, or maybe it was just his swindling that led him to a reputation of a swindler. He also gained much criticism when he met with white supremacists like the Ku Klux Klan. Garvey was convicted of the mail fraud charges and sent to the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. While serving his prison sentence, President Calvin Coolidge commuted his remaining time amidst protests from who else but the Black Americans. Okay. Stole all your damn money. Y'all trying to get his ass free. Right. Who loud? Okay. What we got next here about Garvey? All right. So, the UNIA. Let's see. The UNIA First International Convention. So in 1920, they had their little first, meeting up or whatever. Says that most of the events were held at the New York Liberty Hall. The biggest event was at the New York City's world famous Madison Square Garden, y'all. So all this money that they're getting from these people, y'all see where it's going, right? And it's definitely not going to no ship, because that Black Star Line, the Black Star Line, y'all, was a tragedy. The Black Star Line was an absolute tragedy. Okay. Do y'all see this? Would y'all get on this on this boat? Let me show. Would y'all get on this boat? I would not get on this boat. That don't look safe at all. So they having all these lavish conventions. Marcus Garvey and all his lavish and regal regalia. Everybody like, no, none of this free. So where y'all getting the money from to pay for all of this? You're getting it from these people, man. And this is why you ain't have no money for no decent ship. The ship that you did buy, it was it probably caught on fire a few times. Like you couldn't really use it to go no damn where. So you're gonna end up being a swindler to the people. Okay. So this is one of the famous publishings of the UNIA, the Declarations of Rights of Negro Peoples of the World. So this is just one of the documents that they created. Basically, saying what rights that people of African descent have around the world. Y'all can read it on your own if y'all want to. I'll put the link in the chat if y'all interested in that. But let's get to how the UNIA aligned with the American Colonization Society. So we're gonna go back a little bit. With Theodore Bilbo. And let me look up Theodore Bilbo real quick. I don't know who this is. Here we go. And he was a senator. Here we go. So Theodore G. Bilbo was an American politician born October 13, 1877, near Poplarville, Mississippi. He was an American politician and Democratic senator from Mississippi, best known for his racist and demagogic rhetoric. Okay? Same man. Working with your boy, Marcus Garvey. So we're going to read this right here. And this is from the University of Southern Mississippi. All right. Okay. So Theodore G. Bilbo and the Greater Liberia Act. Remember now, all of this stuff is just a continuation of what started with the American Colonization Society. You see, Greater Liberia Act, they already taking some people over to Liberia. Now they trying the Liberia thing 2.0. So born on October 13th, 1877 at Juniper Grove in Pearl River County, Theodore G. Bilbo occupied a place of prominence in Mississippi politics from 1909 until 1947. He served as state senator, lieutenant governor, and United States senator. While many adored his passionate desire to improve the quality of life for the state's poor and working class white citizens, his segregationist views alienated many others around the country. Following the ideology of Black radicals like Marcus Garvey, founder of the United Negro Improvement Association, and former Garveyite Mitty Gordon, who established the peace movement of Ethiopia, Bilbo sponsored the Greater Liberia Act. In 1939, Bilbo's bill, Bilbo's bill provided the opportunity for so-called African Americans to move to Africa in an attempt to escape the racial intolerance in the United States. Basically, I'm going to give you niggas a pass to Africa, and if you don't go, we finna bust your head. In reality, his intention was to remove all so-called African Americans from the United States, creating a white country. Bilbo regularly corresponded with representatives from the UNIA and the Peace Movement of Ethiopia, receiving petitions signed by so-called African Americans in favor of the bill. The organizations collected more than 2 million signatures, with a selection of those in the Theodore G. Bilbo papers in special collections at the University of Southern Mississippi libraries. The collection also contains clippings, political records, correspondence, photographs, and other documents relating to his life and career. So let's take a look at some of these if we can. Okay, here we got the petitions and a letter. Hold on. Let me see if I can read it. All right, so this was January 7, 1939, from J.R. Stewart, State Commissioner of the UNIA. See, these are people from the UNIA, y'all, that are agreeing with this bullshit. Marcus had millions of people behind him in the UNIA following this whole Back to Africa movement. And the petitions are coming from those people, 1000% sure. So it says, Dear Sir, your letter of December 29th was in Washington assisting. Is that what it say? My arrival from Mississippi, my home. I am putting the finishing touches on our repatriations bill. I will be glad to let you know when I get ready to shoot the works. I want you to know that I appreciate the fact that you and your people are cooperating so wonderfully in this campaign for the benefit of both the white and the black man. Yours truly, USS, U.S. State Senator, TOB or TGB. Yeah, there we go. Theodore G. Bilbo. Yep. So yeah, of course, his racist ass that, wants to have this country for him and his people alone are happy that it's millions of Negroes is trying to get the fuck up out. Of course. It's either that or hang from that tree, nigga. Basically. So we got one good connection right there between the NIA and the KKK, because you better believe that Bilbo was a proud Klansman. You better believe it. All right, what's the next one? What's the next source, y'all? Because the sources were sourcing on this one. All right, secret meetings with the KKK. So this is from Push Black of all channels. Push Black. So here's what happened when Marcus Garvey met the KKK. A day Hennis, July 17, 2024. All right. I regard the Klan, the Anglo-Saxon clubs, and white American societies, as far as the Negro is concerned, are better friends of the race than all other groups of hypocritical whites put together. Marcus Garvey had a vision in mind for our people, but it turned into a nightmare. I wonder why. On June 25th, 1922, Garvey met with an imperial wizard of the KKK in Atlanta to discuss their mutual opposition to interracial relationships and to compare views on social equality. He hoped the Klan would support him in creating a separate Black nation. His mission, however, was a disaster. Other Black civil rights leaders shunned Garvey when they heard of the meeting. They escalated their Garvey Must Go campaign to discredit him and his movement. In 1923, Garvey was convicted of mail fraud and deported 2 years later. Marcus Garvey didn't mind being controversial. Apparently. He praised Jim Crow laws for keeping white people away from Black people. He also made the false claim that since Black people had not built the railroads, they had no right to sit in cars with white people. Y'all know good and damn well we built everything that you see now. Anyway, provocative comments like these drove a wedge between him and the majority of our population. Discrimination is a product of colonialism and a breeding ground for dangerous ideas. Do you think Garvey was wrong for meeting with the KKK? But that's just the beginning, y'all. That's just the beginning. All right. So we done got back to Theodore G. Bilbo. Not a hobbit. Y'all silly. Whoever wrote this. All right, let me see if there's anything else in here y'all need to know about. I'll just share this with y'all. Now let me read this shit, because this shit good. Okay. Theodore G. Bilbo sounds like the name of, we ain't gonna read all that. Theodore G. Bilbo was born in Juniper Grove, Mississippi, October 13th, 1877. He obtained a scholarship to attend Vanderbilt University Law School, but he failed to graduate, perhaps from financial difficulties. Yeah. Although there were accusations of academic misconduct. Nevertheless, Bilbo was admitted to the bar in 1906 and began practicing law in Mississippi. Bilbo was ambitious, however, and soon entered politics, serving in the Mississippi State Senate from 1908 to 1912. In 1910, Bilbo was accused of accepting a bribe to back a candidate for the United States Senate. Bilbo admitted to accepting the bribe, but asserted that he was investigating political corruption. His fellow state senators did not buy the story, and he escaped being expelled from the Senate by one vote short of the 3/4 majority required for expulsion. This scandal did not seem to harm Bilbo's political career. I wonder why. He was elected lieutenant governor, serving from 1912 to 1916. He then served 2 non-consecutive terms of governor of Mississippi from 1916 to 1920, and again from 28 to 32, as Mississippi's constitution did not permit governors to succeed themselves. Theodore G. Bilbo was a good governor, so-called, supposedly. He became well known as a progressive populist who enacted policies to help the poorest residents of Mississippi as long as they was white. He improved the state's finances of Mississippi, implemented a state highway system, introduced compulsory school attendance, built charity hospitals for the poor, and ended public hanging. In the second term, Bilbo introduced the first state sales tax in the United States. Bilbo had less sympathy for the Black residents of Mississippi, however. Among other things, he refused to prevent the lynching of Black Mississippians. So I'm guessing those public hangings was okay. Bilbo's terms as governor were not without controversy, however, and a feud between the governor and the state legislature prevented the passage of a budget in the final year of his second term. After his second term as governor ended, Theodore G. Bilbo moved on to the Senate, serving from 1935 until the end of his life in 47. So this Klansman was all up through there until he died. In the Senate, Bilbo once again established a reputation as a progressive, fervently supporting Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, which is only for them clear folks. Okay. Bilbo feuded with his fellow Mississippi Senator Pat Harrison, who was seen as representing the wealthier classes of Mississippi. Bilbo made use of the Senate floor to promote his populist opinions. What? Haranguing? Again, chime. Anyway, poor folks, haters, and all that. Y'all know what? I'm not even sharing this with y'all. I'm so sorry. Y'all can see it now. Okay. Many of Senator Bilbo's speeches were extremely racist. Even by the standards of his time, y'all, he was more racist than the racists. Goddamn. Anyway, as a result, the Democratic-controlled Senate would only assign him to relatively unimportant committees. When the Republicans gained control of the Senate after the 1946 elections, they, along with the Northern Democrats, refused to permit Bilbo to take his seat because they believed his racist speeches had incited violence against Black folks in the South. Bilbo's supporters among the Southern Democrats threatened a filibuster unless he was seated. The matter was resolved when Bilbo proved unable to serve his last term because he had developed oral cancer. Wonder where that came from. Anyway, Bilbo returned to Mississippi for treatment and he died in New Orleans on August 21st, 1947. By describing Bilbo as racist, I do not mean that he only shared in the prejudices of his time and place. If that was the case, his racist views would be hardly worth writing about. He lived, after all, in the heyday of progressive scientific racism, in which all of the smart people believed that human beings could be graded like eggs from superior to inferior. No, Theodore G. Bilbo's racism went further than the usual bigotry. At some point, Bilbo joined the Ku Klux Klan. Told y'all his ass was a damn Klans member. I ain't have to look that shit up to know. It's just common sense. And he remained a proud member of the Klan his entire life, even after the Klan had dissolved as a formal organization. As a governor and senator, Bilbo upheld and advanced the Klan's cause of white supremacy. At the end of his life, Bilbo wrote a book titled Take Your Choice, Separation or Mongrelization, which served as a summation of his views on race. Although in the prologue, he professed to have no feelings of hostility against persons of any race, but only opposed a mixing of races, because he believed the Black man should support as much as the white man. The book's contents tell a different story. Throughout his book, Bilbo made it clear that he believed that Blacks were intellectually and morally inferior to whites, describing Blacks in the most uncomplimentary terms as possible. In his view, whites founded every great civilization. See, y'all, this is where this shit come from. It is pervasive in society. These views coming from these people who end up in these high positions, they get to put their views into law. They get to put their views into school systems and school textbooks. They get to put their views into the minds of every child and every adult, not only in America, but the whole damn world. Which is why people today think that Rome, Greece, Egypt, and Babylon was built by some damn white folks who didn't freaking exist until fucking 7,000 years ago. Somebody. So when the whites began to mix with other races, these civilizations declined and vanished. Is that what it is? Is it that the whites began to mix with us, or is it that us began to mix? Bruh. He goes on to say whites founded our American civilization. Bruh, when I tell you every lie is upon another lie, every lie. I want y'all to take all of his words, right, and flip that bit. If it say whites, flip it to what you call today Black. Okay? Because then that would be the truth. Okay? He say whites founded our American civilization, and only the heroic efforts of Southern whites have prevented the race mixing that destroyed so many past empires. Unfortunately, the efforts of Northern liberals to achieve political and social equality for the Blacks threatened to undo everything. Bilbo's solution was to encourage the voluntary immigration of American Blacks back to Africa. The ultimate separate but equal endeavor. There we fucking have it. Bilbo trying to get y'all ass up out of here. Because he said this is a white civilization after all. Child. So yeah, this is why your boy met with your other boy, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. So what this is. All right. It was somebody else that Garvey met with. Somebody by the name of Edward Young Clark. Y'all see him down here? They say that Edward Young Clark rescued the Klan from financial ruin in 1920. They say that he got it from membership dues, but I don't know. Some in me tell me that he got that shit from Garvey. Some tell me that he got it from the UNIT. Anyway, but yeah, this is Edward Clark Young. This was also this was the imperial wizard that they say that Marcus Garvey met with. This was the one that he made plans with, but it wasn't just him. It was also Bilbo and other members of the Klan that were meeting with him and other leaders like W.E.B. Du Bois, to get something done, to get these niggas up out of America and off to Africa, because we got to get them up out of here. This is a white man's country after all, right? Right? Yeah. Y'all can read this too. All right, so basically, we're seeing that this man is calling these folks he's calling all of our people to go back to Africa because the white man don't want us here. And he's meeting with the white man to get assistance and help and aid in telling these folks to go to Africa and to actually get them over there. Right here, we have a letter from the KKK. This is the women's organization. It's kind of like the Eastern Stars of the KKK. From Emma Carter wrote this, I guess. Look, a big mass meeting, a call to the colored citizens of Atlanta, Georgia, to hear the great West Indian Negro leader, Honorable Marcus Garvey, president of the Universal Negro Improvement Association of Jamaica, West Indies. Crazy how none of this say African. Anyway, Big Bethel AM. Oh, they go to the African Methodist. They go to African. Okay. Big Bethel AME Church, corner Auburn Avenue on Butler Street. Sunday afternoon at 3:00, March 25th, 1927. He brings a message of inspiration to the 12 million of our people. Oh, wait, is that where they get that 12 million folks was transported on ships from Africa during the transatlantic slave trade? That 12 million right there. Is that where they get it from? I'm just wondering. Anyway, he brings a message of inspiration to the 12 million of our people in this country. Subject: the Negroes of the West Indies after 78 years of emancipation, with a general talk on the world position of the race. Wait a minute. Hold on. Let me do the math real quick. Because is he saying what I think he's saying? Is he calling this the West Indies? Because that's a no-no. You don't do that. Nah, he probably just talking about Jamaica, because 78 years, that would have been 1839. Okay. With a general talk on the world position of the race. All right. An orator of exceptional force. Professor Garvey has spoken to packed audiences in England, New York, Boston, Washington, Philadelphia, Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Louis. He all over the damn country. Anyway, he has traveled to the principal countries of Europe and was the first Negro to speak to the Veterans Club of London, England. This is the only chance to hear a great man who has taken his message before the world. Come out early to secure seats. It is worth traveling 1,000 miles to hear. All invited. Reverend R.A. Singleton, D.D., I don't know, pastor. So he done traveled to all these places, including London, but he ain't went to Africa to actually see if it's some Africans that's gonna give us some land over there in Africa. Wasn't that the problem? Wasn't that the problem that we seen in the movie The Black King? Let me link y'all to that. Wasn't the problem was the fact that they never actually got any type of support from an African, from any African leader or African country. Nobody gave them any type of permission or leeway to come over there. So you can go all around the world and get all these people riled up to go to Africa, but if y'all ain't got no place over there, how in the hell is you gonna actually get there? How you supposed to actually carry that out, Marcus Garvey? You selling people a dream, and I feel like you knew that this shit was not gonna actually pan out. But anyway, let me see here. It was something else that I wanted to show y'all. You see? All right, I may as well show this to y'all. Come on now, newspapers. Damn. Extra. Okay. Have y'all seen this article right here from the Choctaw Advocate? Funny that it's the Choctaw Advocate, okay? Talking about Negro business. What does the Choctaw have to do with the Negro? Like they ain't got nothing in common. So why is the Choctaw Advocate talking about Negro business? Can somebody enlighten me? So on Wednesday, July 24th, 1912, the Choctaw Advocate told y'all niggas the Negro race has billions in the U.S. Return of colored people to dark continent is impossible owing to material progress made by them. It is announced. In Kansas City, Missouri, disenfranchise a Negro and send him back to Africa. Absurd. Impossible. More than $1 billion worth of United States real estate, which he owns in his own name in the United States, is not easily to be taken from him. Child, tell that to your descendants. Besides, the Negro is not an African. He is an American. African. Now, this is 1912, my people that's listening. Okay. 1912, 12 years before the Racial Integrity Act. This man is saying the Negro is not an African. He is an American. African is a misnomer. African American is a pseudo species. Why try to send him back to a country which is not his own? So says Dr. J.R. Hawkins of North Carolina, Secretary and Commissioner of Education for the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Now, Dr. J.R. Hawkins just said that African is a misnomer, but his church is named African Methodist Episcopal. Something for y'all to research. When did the Methodist Episcopal Church become the African Methodist Episcopal Church? Some of the homework for y'all to do after this live. So, a delegate to the General Conference at the Allen Chapel, Dr. Hawkins has made a study of the business status of his race in connection with his regular work as one of the foremost educators. It probably will startle the world when it realizes that we've acquired in the last 50 years over $1 billion in real estate. Dr. Hawkins said, and that is only the beginning of the rapid forward march, which the Negro is making as a businessman. The Negro could not help being a businessman. He was surrounded with it in the years of his slavery. To add in Dr. Hawkins, the Negro is the original businessman. The Negro is the original merchant. When these people came over here, y'all, they didn't have no industries to contribute to. They took industries from the Negroes or the Indians that had these industries established already. When them Europeans were coming over here, the Moors were coming over here from North Africa and Europe to trade or to take merchandise from America to other parts of the world, they were taking it from these Negro established companies, these Negro merchandise, these Negro farmers. It's Negroes that grew cotton. It's Negroes that processed cotton. It's Negroes that made clothes and jeans and dresses from cotton. It's Negroes that processed tobacco, grew tobacco, made cigars from tobacco, snuff from tobacco. It's Negroes that grew all kinds of seed oils, linseed oil, rapeseed oil, pushed it out to the rest of the world. It's Negroes that grew all this corn, manufactured corn syrup, pushed it out to the rest of the world. It's Negroes that grew sugar cane, manufactured sugar, molasses, rum, pushed it out to the rest of the world, baby. We ain't get shit from y'all. It's the Negroes that y'all got every damn thing from. The Negro could not help but being a businessman because that's what his daddy is. The Negro cannot help being a farmer because that's what his daddy is, okay? He was surrounded with it in the years of his so-called slavery. He was taught how to drive a bargain in horses or real estate, even if his master didn't teach him how to read and write, because his master was probably his daddy. Anyway, okay. There are 400 self-support newspapers daily and weekly owned and published by Negroes in the United States. 3,000 physicians have been graduated from Negro and white schools and are now practicing among their people. 2,000 lawyers have been admitted to the bar in the United States Courts of Justice, and 380 authors are found among our race. We own 41 schools and colleges, representing an investment of $38 million, and $45 million has been spent in church property for Negroes. Negro men own and control 51 banks, which are prosperous and flourishing, and $650,000 has been invested in Negro libraries. And it is significant that in the Southland, Negroes own 180,000 farms on which 50 years ago they toiled to the crack of the slave driver's whip. The Negro is a born American, and he feels it his country. Africa has no call for him because ain't none of his people over there. Ain't nobody that he related to is over there except for them treacherous ass Negroes that left, calling for him to come back home. He ain't got no grandmama over there. He ain't got no great granddaddy over there. All of his people is buried in the soil of America. It is as a fairy tale to him to be from Africa. All you Negroes, all you so-called African Americans that push Pan-Africanism, it's a fairy tale, y'all. It's a romanticism. And when y'all get y'all ass up over there, you knocked in the head with reality, and you wake up from your fairy tale and from your romantic ass dream, dreaming of Africa and how great it is for you to be African. Pestilence and disease are not uncommon in Africa, but America nurtures him and makes him strong, and he likes it and intends to stay in it. That doctrine is being taught our, 1,650,000 children in the public school. The Negro does not ask for any special legislation in his favor. He is willing to take his chance and is confident that he can bear his own burden as well as the white man. And toward that end, we are striving to educate our ignorant poor, make healthy the weak, and to help more Negroes to own their own homes and farms. So he just told y'all that they pushing that Pan-African doctrine on their kids back in 1912. And that's due to these people like Edward Sevier Cox and Walter Plecker and Theodore Bilbo and John Powell. It's men like these that create your school curriculums. They tell the teachers what to teach your children. So it's because of them that your children think that they come from Africa. These people tell the nurses and the registrar at the hospital what to put on your child's birth certificate. So that's why I got Negro or Black on your child birth certificate. When your child is an Indian, because your mama and your grandmama and your great grandmama is an Indian. Y'all got to see this. If y'all got any common sense, you gonna see this. Close all these damn tabs. So we finna wrap it up. So I want to show y'all what happens when people are disinherited by having their identity taken away from them. Y'all just read how many of us had land in this country. Y'all just read the billions of dollars in real estate that we had, right? Through land and farms. Okay. We just read that in the Choctaw Advocate. And that was back in 1912. So we still in the 20th century, the earlier 20th century. We have all these resources and provisions, right? We got land, we got our own business, our own practices, right? We got our own farms. But during this time, we also dealing with Jim Crow. During this time, we also dealing with an entire campaign of, if we can't get these niggas to Africa, we gonna kill them. So we got all these lynchings and riots. We got the Red Summer of 1919 all over the damn country. We having race riots and people being hanged or just killed left and right. I'm pretty sure those of y'all that's listening, y'all, if you've done your genealogy, if you know some of your family history, like me, you probably find people in your families that's victims of the shit that we talking about. Like, that's what makes it's not just me reading an article on the internet. This shit is real. This really happened to us. My family was really ran up off of land by the goddamn KKK in motherfucking Sassa, Georgia, Dawson, Terrell County, Georgia, what they call terrible terror, for their extreme violence during Jim Crow. My grandmother, my great grandmother, my grandmother, my father's mother, lost her life to this violence. And of course, if they was losing their life, you know that they was losing the land. These folks said, we gonna get you niggas up out of here. If not by a boat, then by a grave. If y'all won't leave, we'll just bury you. So, from 15 million acres to 1 million, how so-called black people, you lose your identity, you lose your land, you lose your life. I hope this shit is sinking in. From 15 million acres, and it was more than that, y'all. This is all of your land. You just been losing it, just bit by bit, generation by generation. How black people lost their land. At its height, black land ownership was impressive. At the turn of the 20th century, formerly enslaved black people and their heirs owned 15 million acres of land, primarily in the South, mostly used for farming. In 1920, the 925,000 so-called African, we're going to call them American. Anytime you see African American, blank that African bullshit the fuck out. It ain't welcome over here. In 1920, the 925,000 American farms represented 14% of the farms in America. And that's nothing when you had all of the farms in America back in the 1600s, before these people started their homesteading. Sadly, things turned for the worse as 600,000 farmers were forced off their land, with only 45,000 farmers remaining in 1975. Now, our folks are only 1% of rural landowners in the U.S. and under 2% of farmers. But they say it was a Native American that was wiped out. But who the fuck was really being wiped out? Over years, our people have lost their land through a number of circumstances, including government action, deception, and a reign of domestic terror in the South that forced our people from their homes through threats of violence and lynching. That terror and economic exploitation precipitated the Great Migration. How we lost the land is an untold story. An investigation by AP documented the process by which people were tricked or intimidated out of their property. In this study of 107 land takings in 13 southern and border states, 406 landowners lost over 24,000 acres of farm and timberland and 85 properties, such as city lots and stores. The property, which today is owned by who? And who? Is valued in the tens of millions of dollars, the property. But what about these that sit on the property? What are they valued at? What about that? What's their value? More than $10 million. These that sit and own your ancestors' property is valued at more than $10 million. I hope y'all hearing me. In recent years, groups such as the Federation of Southern Cooperatives in Atlanta and the Land Loss Prevention Project in Durham, North Carolina, receive new reports of land takings on a regular basis, while the Penn Center in St. Helena Island, South Carolina, has gathered 2,000 such cases. One story from the AP provides the context by which families lost their land to thievery and violence. After midnight on October 4th, 1908, 50 hooded white men surrounded the home of a farmer in Hickman, Kentucky, and ordered him to come out for a whipping. When David Walker refused and shot at their ass instead, the mob poured coal oil on his house and set it afire. Walker ran out the front door, followed by 4 screaming children and his wife carrying a baby in her arms. The mob shot them all, wounding 3 children and killing the others. Walker's oldest son never escaped the burning house. No one was ever charged with the killings, and the surviving children were deprived of the farm their father died defending. Land records show that Walker's 2.5-acre farm was simply folded into the property of a white neighbor. The neighbor soon sold it to another man whose daughter owns the undeveloped land today. It's just one story of the millions of people that this shit happened to. It's more about land as a home. It's about economics and culture all rolled up into one. Jenny L. Stevens, executive director of the Center for Heirs Property Preservation, said, and y'all look up heirs property. Based in Charlotte, South Carolina, the organization serves 15 counties in the Palmetto State, including the Low Country, where Gullah Geechee have struggled to hold on to their ancestral homelands on the Sea Islands in the face of development, gentrification, and corporate intrusion. For generations, families have had the land procured through the blood, sweat, and tears of their ancestors until many are forced to sell it. The center promotes sustainable land use to help historically underserved families realize the wealth building asset of their land and prevents heirs properties owners from losing their land. Under the concept of heirs property, a form of communal land ownership found among rural communities in the South, sounds like some Indian type shit. Both black and white, so-called, numerous heirs of the original landowner are co-owners of the land, each owning a percentage share. The problem arises when corporations and developers entice family members to sell their share, becoming family members themselves, and forcing a partition sale, a court-mandated auction sale of the land, all without notice to the other family members. Jeannie Stevens noted that while the issue of land loss is not new, it is receiving more attention these days. Indigenous landowners now find themselves grappling with the same land loss issues facing so-called Native Americans, who are the same people. Once thought to be the most unproductive land, now everybody wants to live in the Sea Islands. Hilton Head Island is a most salient example of once predominantly so-called Black-owned land that is now in majority white hands, due in no small measure to partition sales. Beaufort County, South Carolina, which includes Hilton Head, was 57% so-called Black in 1950, but is now 77% white, as the Nation reported, with our farmers falling from half of all farmers throughout the state to only 7% today. The land loss these populations are experiencing is a gentrification issue transposed onto rural communities, as Lynn noted. While it is an economic issue, it is also an environmental one, as Stevens emphasized. Once the land is lost, it's not left green anymore. Now you see all these condos with asphalt. There is some relief in sight for heirs property owners in South Carolina, and this applies to heirs property owners all over the country, not just South Carolina, y'all. And what could signal a trend for the rest of the South. In 2016, then Governor Nikki Haley signed the Clementa C. Pinckney Uniform Petition of Heirs Property Act, named in honor of the state lawmaker among the 800, and an act of racial terror at Charleston's Emmanuel AME Church in 2015. The law allows co-tenants to buy out the shares of land speculators, making it difficult for land to be sold through the courts, and allows judges to consider factors such as the sentimental, ancestral, and fair market value of the property. If you can get people to maximize their potential through land, they don't need a handout, Jeannie Stevens said, underscoring the importance of owning the land and building family wealth. It is time for your child to go off to college. Maybe you had trees growing for a while. One person who has clear title, they had the trees cut off their land and could send their children to college without student loans. That money was not a loss to their family. Literally, that wealth was passed to their family, she added. That's a very simple example of wealth building. The fact these children can come out of college without a student loan. And that's a huge case of pretty much all of us. If you do your genealogy, you're going to find land that some ancestor owned. Matter of fact, you should find many ancestors in your genealogy who owned land. And if you was to do the chain of title, you would see how that land transferred from your ancestor to some other folks, probably white people. And you probably find out that most of your ancestors did not lawfully or properly sell that land to those people. It was probably taken. You'll probably find out that something happened to your ancestors that had that land. If you was to do your genealogy, you'll find out a whole bunch of shit. You find out a whole bunch of shit. Here's another article. Black farmers lost at least 326. Get out of here. Black farmers lost at least 326 billion during the 20th century, y'all. During the 20th century. A new study has found that Black farmers have lost more than 326 billion in land value during the 20th century. That figure, according to researchers, is a deeply conservative estimate. So are we talking about trillions? Yes, we're talking about trillions. Of how much in real dollars racist practices cost American farmers since 1920. Y'all read that too. So we're going to actually see what folks of today are experiencing, you know, how this whole back to Africa thing has carried on over generations of time and how it still exists today. Y'all remember in 2019 when they was talking about the 400 years of slavery, and you know how it had been 400 years since 1619 when them 20 and odd Negroes that, you know, they changed on the plaque, they changed Negro to African American. Like I said, they always hijacking something and adding something that was not there to begin with. So they started this whole year of return movement in Africa, trying to use another tactic to get our ass up out of America. Do all of these police brutality campaigns, make that shit public, put that shit all on TV, do Black Lives Matter, do the George Floyd thing, and you're going to give these niggas a reason to want to get up out of this country, right? That was all happening at the same time, right? 2019, Black Lives Matter, Trayvon Martin, Philando Castile, Freddie Gray. You got all of this shit being publicized and aired on TV, right? And then you got Umar Johnson coming out the woodwork, and they all, you know, we need to do something about this. And then here comes the year of return. Africa and the diaspora, so-called, must forge closer ties, huh? In 2019, Ghana successfully hosted the Year of Return. Ghana 2019, a year-long program of activities to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the arrival of the first recorded enslaved Africans, apparently, in the state of Virginia in the United States. A second edition called Beyond the Return was planned for 2020. Ghana's ambassador to the United States, H.E. Dr. Balfour Ajay Barwa, was one of the architects of the Year of Return, Ghana 2019. He spoke with Africa Renewal's Benjamin Tete about the historic event and how Africans and the diaspora can forge stronger bonds, huh? Why y'all ain't had them bonds back in 1920 when Marcus Garvey ass was trying to get folks over there? Where all these bonds come from all of a sudden? Because when nobody talking about these bonds back in 1920, back in 1870, back in 1850, or 1830. Them bonds didn't seem to exist, but all of a sudden in 2019, now we got a bond between Africa, specifically Ghana, and Americans that they call Black. So anyway, we got this whole Year of Return thing going on in Ghana. The Ghana president, they even so-called apologized to us for, selling us off. Because y'all know the narrative, or one of the narratives, is that they sold us to these folks. Another narrative is that they kidnapped us, that they went over there and like took a net and threw the net on us and, gathered us up and just drugged us back to the coast. Another narrative it's a lot of narratives out there, but this one, he's apologizing for selling them for alcohols and trinkets, and he's inviting them back. Come on back over to Ghana. We'll give you citizenship. We'll give you land. We'll make you feel right at home. What? The Ghanaian make you feel comfortable. They make you feel safe, so you ain't gotta worry about no racism. It's just not the same motherfucking saying Marcus Garvey had, that the American Colonization Society back in the early 1800s said: to escape racial violence, to escape racial prejudice, you should go to Africa. Well, here we got the Ghanaian ambassador saying the same damn thing over 100 years later, y'all. No, excuse me. Over 200 years later, y'all. The shit continues to pass on through generations. Okay? It's not nothing new. It's the same old shit for the same effect. But let's see. I want to show y'all something from Jesse Peterson, of all damn people. This is the Back to Africa Afromercial. Let me show y'all this. This shit is funny. Yeah, that was hilarious. If y'all missed that, y'all really missing out. Y'all is really missing out. So yeah, they got people, riled up with all this propaganda, with the racial violence, police brutality, all of that. Not saying that it's not happening, but just like Jim Crow, it's happening for a reason. There's a whole agenda behind the shit. They trying to get your ass up out of here. They trying to make sure that you don't for one iota, 1 second, think that you are American, but that you are African. And hell, they mean to you over here anyway. So what the hell is keeping you from going to Africa? You may as well go. You may as well go back. Why the hell not? So I want to send y'all or show y'all this one last video right now of what would happen if we actually went to Africa. Mm. Okay, so basically, to conclude everything, what y'all just heard them talk about in 2020 something is the same, literally the same words and phrases that you were hearing Marcus Garvey, Theodore Bilbo, Ernest Xavier Cox, Robert Finley of the American Colonization Society. It's literally the same words and phrases. To escape racial violence, we should have the Negroes move, quote unquote, back to Africa. But I need y'all to understand that those Negroes that they're trying to get out of America are the Aboriginal American people who are the rightful inheritors and owners of the land by being an heir. You have the heir's property in America, and you have lost that heir's property through violence, trickery, and just being, misled into thinking that you are something that you are not. So you end up giving it away or selling it away, not knowing that this land has been in your family for generations upon generations. So it's up to y'all to not only know who you are, but know what your identity holds, what it means to be Aboriginal American, deeper than Indigenous, what it means to be the original inhabitants, what your ancestors lost, what you lost when the Racial Integrity Act misclassified you, what you lost when your American Indian ancestors were enslaved, and had the label Black placed on them. You lost your identity. You lost your inheritance. You lost your heritage. You still have your culture because they can't kill the Indian in you, but they can misclassify you and they can trick you into thinking that you're something that you're not. Also, that they can have America be a white man's land. So I want to thank y'all for coming out again and, hanging out with me so we can go over these sources and pull back the layers and see, what these folks in history are really trying to tell us. See what's really going on and how history continues to repeat itself because we're not awake, and we all need to wake up. We need to realize what's going on, that this same thing has been happening for over 200 years, and if we don't all become privy to it and understand what's happening, that it can likely happen again in another 20 years. Okay? So y'all, do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe. Please like the video if you felt like this was informative or valuable to you in any kind of way. And also, do your genealogy. Do your genealogy. I do plan to have a video, where we do like a genealogy session and like teach people how to do it. I also plan to have another bill where we teach people how to research so you can become a researcher yourself and find out what was really going on and what's happening today on your own, because it hit different when you see this shit yourself. It hit different when you make these discoveries yourself. It's a whole nother kind of feeling, a whole nother kind of experience. So again, thank y'all for coming out, like the video, and I'm going to see y'all next Wednesday for Way Back Wednesday. Peace.